welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's the third in a series of webinars supported by Meat and Livestock Australia and their producer demonstration site project called Realising Benefits from Sheep eID's. So I'm Grace Evans, a Senior Research and Extension Officer with SFS. And with Jessie Wetnall and Michelle McClure, we're partnered with BCG's PDS with Alison Friske and Grace Hosking for the project. And shout out to BCG's main field day, which is actually going on today. So we wish them luck. So this webinar is the third and final in a series of three. The first webinar covered production and finishing systems, why use eID, what new technologies are available and drive production, and explored practical applications of eID across key areas of sheep production and finishing systems with Nathan Scott from Achieve Ag Solutions. The second webinar covered data management, the why, how and what of data collection with Jane Mulholland from NextGen Agri, and the practical applications of data collection and management on farm with Andrew Whitlocks from the Meadows. Those webinars are available on the SFS website and will be available through BCG and MLA in the future. And the final webinar today will be a discussion with some of the farmers and industry that are using eID themselves. Going through the pros and cons of how they've found their adoption journey and what advice they have for people just starting out. So I'll stop sharing there. I'd like to welcome Fiona Conroy, David Gordon and John Connell to the webinar today. Can I get you guys to go through, just introduce yourselves and a little bit of your background on and what's one piece of eID technology that you wish existed? Fiona, can we start with you?
Okay, look, we farm on the Bellarine Peninsula just out of Geelong, and we primarily run a beef operation that we've been performance recording our cattle for probably 30 years as part of a progeny test program with the Tamania Angus stud. So, yeah, we've that's been a big why we've been quite comfortable with things like eID. And our sheep business has been sort of a bit of a secondary thing. But we've decided that when we've got eID tags in, then we might as well use them and try and work out which sheep are doing a better job than the other ones, because everybody should be carrying their weight and not sort of being a burden on the business. The one thing I'd like in eID technology is ear tags that didn't fall out. That's always just been a real challenge. I don't know how you get eID ear tags that stay in, and the ones that stay in don't seem to go down well with shearers, but tag loss is a bit of an issue for us. So, yeah, tags that stayed in would be fabulous.
Absolutely. David?
Yeah, we're basically, have you got me there now?
Yep.
We sort of live the southwest corner of Victoria, a place called Conda, a couple 2,500 acres roughly, running a sort of roughly 5,000 commercial ewes and primarily a based operation. We're using basically the electronic ear tag and our stuff, especially in the stud, since inception pretty much. We find probably far more benefit through our stud business and seed stock business than the commercial at this point in time. There are a lot of benefits within that you can see within business to utilise your electronic ear tags better. I think there's a lot of education needs and use of technology to help people understand how to use that technology better. And an ear tags, an eID tag, I'd love to have one for politicians so I'd cut them quicker.
John?
My name's John Connell. I'm a pregnancy scanning contractor based in Western Victoria. And we also scan we've been scanning here since 1999, and we've been scanning in Tasmania since 2002. So we have been scanning electronic tags as part of the pregnancy scanning since they were introduced here in 2017. And there was a fairly big adoption initially, but that has definitely decreased over the years. So we probably don't scan anywhere near as many as what we once did, purely because people weren't using the information. I have a farm myself, and one thing that I wish the tags that we could use or have for the tags is that they could be read by a mobile phone, so that if you had a problem with a sheep, that you could take that information there and then on the spot.
Yeah, fantastic.
Eh?
That would be brilliant. I'm sure someone's working on an app.
Yeah. Well, they should be able to do it, surely.
Yeah. I'll open it up to the group for the discussion, but I'd love to start with how the adoption journey has gone for each of you. John, you said that scanning eIDs have dropped off, but when you first started, how did you go utilising that technology?
Well, I don't really. Initially, when a lot of scanners use their own XR, whereas I've always used the farmer's XR, so that I just give it back to them and all the information's already captured. I don't have to transfer the information. So when we had the XR 3000s, which was the initial machines that the majority of people had, they were very tricky and very difficult to set up. Now the XR 5000 is pretty simple and a lot easier to set up and to get going. However, you still have some problems, and now I'm pretty good with it and I can normally sort it out, but it does take a little bit of a knack, and sometimes, when you're early in the morning and you're wanting to get going, it can be a little frustrating if there's a problem and you can't get hold of anybody to give you some assistance. They're working office hours and they're really good. Once you can get them, they'll solve the problem for you. But sometimes it's just not in our time frame. So once everything's going, it's pretty good. The biggest problem is missing tags. So if we have an animal that comes through without a tag, some places will draft them off behind and others just accept that the information is not going to be 100% correct. Because once we record an animal with a tag and then the next one comes in without a tag, if we don't realise that and we let it go, then that pregnancy status of that untagged animal goes to the previous animal. And that's a problem.
Yeah. Fiona and David, have you found similar issues in your usage?
With ear tags can be an issue. I think we've narrowed down our ear tags a little bit with losses in ear tags as compared to what we used to before with a different ear tag, but a different company's ear tag, but it seems to have a better retention. But some of the information going through your XRs and people understanding how to use their XR 5000s, etc., is probably one of the biggest issues I see on farm. Someone like John, probably who's using it 24/7 in part of his business, probably finds it a lot easier than someone, say, like myself, because I struggle a little bit and I use it quite a lot particularly with the stud side of our business, where we use and the weights and the lifetime management of animals. I think it's that can be once they've read that tag, the data's there for it's a lifetime traceability of that animal on your farm. Whether once it leaves your property, how well the traceability continues on, maybe another thing. Yeah, so I think there's a lot around the training of probably more like producers, etc., around how to understand it and use the technology would be a great help to.
Yeah. Fiona, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so like I should have said earlier, we run a commercial self-replacing superfine flock. And one of the challenges, like we weren't really doing all that much with our electronic e-tags in our sheep until we got involved in the PDS. And we had already had sort of a program we were using for our cattle called Cool Collect, run by Sapien. And that was costing us $300 a quarter. And we were using it for all our breed plan data, our animal health treatments, and uploading and downloading information into the NLIS for sales. And it was great for audits. And, we're now using those NLIS tags in the cattle for an Opti-way. So it was really only $80 a quarter to get an additional species, to get the sheep included into that. So when we came into the PDS, we literally didn't have any sort of real direction on what we were recording, but we had a weigh crate and a wand, and we had the tags sheep. So we thought we'd go with that. And then we went to shearing, and we were recording ewe, hogget, fleece weights and mid-side samples. And we made a few mistakes with that. But I think one of the biggest challenges is there is so much different stuff out there, whether it's wands or it's hardware or it's software or it's weigh scale interfaces, that some of this stuff doesn't talk to each other all that well. A lot of these companies are now getting into the data management side of things as well, and that's not necessarily sort of transferable from one brand to another. And I think one thing that's becoming apparent to me is sometimes, like I know we've used, like we've got a Tapari sheep handler, which is the picture behind me, which has been great. But people use the Tapari software and then they're not using the True Test software or whatever. So one of the challenges is having stuff that talks to each other, and then things get updated all the time. So you need to have really good support services on the end of the phone so you can work through hiccups and downloads and things like that. I try and keep it as simple as possible, because you can spend a lot of time on a helpline when you want to be doing the job. Or if you're doing work on a weekend and there isn't a helpline available, that gets pretty frustrating as well. Or you're starting really early, like John mentioned, and someone's not on the end of the helpline when you need them. So we've tried to keep it really simple by using one software package across everything, which is the Cool Collect. They don't do any hardware. But yeah, and I've got a good relationship. We've been using them now for probably 25 years, and I can download Excel spreadsheets from that program. And but it's more really geared for studs. But as I said, the additional species for us as a commercial sheep operation was only $85 a quarter. But if it's a subscription, people sometimes shy away from that, but things are constantly updated. So you're better to have a subscription service to some of this software, so you're always up to date and you've got people on the other end of the phone.
Yeah. Michelle, you've got your hand up there.
So with our last webinar, Jane Mulholland recommended having a visual ID tag and an eID tag. So are many people using the two tag system, John?
Yeah, most. Yeah.
So you still then
I'd say all of them would have the two tag system, yeah.
And so that's
especially the stud guys.
Both tags and making it hard when they're coming through for you scanning to work out who they are then.
Well, it's not so much for me to work out who they are. It's more if they haven't got a tag and we don't realise that, then they get their pregnancy status gets recorded on the previous sheep. So it's not so much that it's not identifying it, and then that sheep goes out and it's got no pregnancy status because it's got no tag. So if we're not on the ball, because we're scanning flat out, we're drafting, we're marking, and we've got to watch also that the tag's being read, and that's the lowest priority of everything else that we're doing. So if we don't catch that tag, that it hasn't beeped, it hasn't read, it's another screen to watch, then it goes out without being recorded. And its pregnancy status is recorded on a different animal.
I suppose also, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like all the stud guys who really are the only ones who use the information that I have, will always have a double tag. You know, the commercial guys, they aren't that worried. You know, really, if they have a tag or not. You know, that they're working on the majority being recorded, not every single animal. So they will only have the one tag, and that's a problem if that's lost. But the stud guys always double tagged, always have another one.
And scanning's a fairly high throughput in terms of animals. Have you found when there isn't that tag, or when you're having to check for the tags, does that slow you down much?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And as I said, normally you have a dummy tag or something that you can scan instead. But as long as you've got to realise, and as I said, there's lots going on, and if you don't keep an eye on that screen or listen for that beep, then that sheep will go out without being scanned properly, or with its the main problem is that its pregnancy status is on the previous animal, because we'll still mark it, we'll still draft it, it'll go into its right spot. It's just the electronic record is inaccurate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got about 20 farmers involved in the PDS, and we've found from a lot of them that initial labour or the time cost in learning the technology has been a fair bit of a barrier to a lot of people when they're first starting out. How have you guys found that in your usage?
I suppose, yeah.
Sorry.
We started with the cattle, so I was sort of comfortable with the technology. And I've got a program that I'm comfortable with. Like the whole, all this tech stuff can be really daunting when you start. But I think if whatever you do, if you just start with something really, really simple, now whether it's, I reckon this preg scanning and the fertility data is probably the most valuable start to begin with. If you can work out your twins and your singles and empties, and then down the track you've got a record of who's a twin and who's a single, you can run them together and then you can draft them off if you've got the, you know, something like a Tapari auto drafter or whatever auto drafter makes. So you can keep those animals together and then draft them off later if you need to. And then you can manage those twins and singles separately. And then you can follow through when you put the tags in the progeny and record whether those progeny were born out of a mob of twins or a single, and that really affects their lifetime performance. So then when you want to do other measurements down the track, you're comparing apples with apples. So, you know, twin-born lambs are going to have a slightly, a bit broader. They're going to cut a little bit less wool because they've had different nutrition as when the ewe's been pregnant. And you can get really distracted visually by looking at lambs that are born as singles because they're bigger and stuff. If you can identify just some basic stuff like that and start with really simple things, it makes it easier. But don't try and do too much too quick. And as I said before, make sure if you're using some software and you can get that information in an Excel spreadsheet, you feel comfortable with Excel, you can sort stuff, but just make sure you've got a really good backup service and support and helpline to help you talk through stuff, and just use them heaps. Don't shy away from ringing them up and asking really basic questions. And if you have to ring them about the same question again, just keep ringing them. That's what you're paying for.
Yep. David, did you have something to add?
I think what was spoken about there a minute ago by Fiona is the compatibility between your software that you're using and what you're. That's one of the things that I think is really important. Where, you know, like we use a ClipX, and sometimes it doesn't, even with the correct technology that it reads. Sometimes it won't draft for you. Something you have to turn it off and start again. As long as you're comfortable and understand what you're doing, and I think you start small. You got to use. I think it's a step-by-step approach to using some of the new technologies, so as you don't don't get confused. It's quite easy to confuse yourselves by trying to do too much at once. And I think, over time, and I think it will change as time goes on with the new generation of, producers coming through the system who are far more tech savvy than what the likes of myself are. I play with it, and we ring a lot. We do get good help if we need it. I have a son at home on the farm now who he thinks I'm silly because I can't do all the things that he does, but with these things, and he's the sort of generation where they'll incorporate that into their business structures and use a lot more of it, I think, going forward. Through the stud stuff, we find it exceptional to do. Like lifetime management is so important in that side of the things. Which you is one thing we haven't done is used it through preg testing, which this year we were to do that for more reproduction traits through our stud side of the business. So we keep an eye on that with the changes that are going on further up the line in the industry. So and our ear tagging, we use 2 ear tags in the stud stuff, not the commercials. We have a visual ID tag that matches the electronic tag. So when we tag when we're birth weighing, all we do is punch in number 1, and it's automatically matched to the eID tag of has its own matching eID tag. So and it seems to work really well that way. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, fantastic. Everyone's mentioned the tech support and the supporting systems. And Fiona, you said they have been really good. John, you said you were using farmers' eID systems. How have you had much to do with the tech support through that, through the different systems, through the farmers?
Unfortunately, yeah. Only because when things go wrong. But now, I mean, as David was saying, you get used to it and you learn about it. So you can normally I can troubleshoot now. But initially, we had lots and lots of problems. But now it's pretty simple. I've got a sheet of instructions if I can't remember what to do. And then if we still can't get it going, then we will ring support as long as it's in the hours to do so. And they're really good. They're great. They'll get us going. But just depends what time of the day it is.
Yeah. Yeah, some early starts that you might not be getting a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say, quite often the problems can be a matter of turning it on and turning it off again. As simple as that.
Oh, it's normally something small. Like it's normally just one missed instruction. Yes, and you just got to go through it and make sure everything's right. But it's normally bugger all.
I suppose using the technology in such a contained time frame that scanning season is, you develop those troubleshooting. Like you said, you've got the sheet there. I've heard from several farmers that when they're using it once a year, that relearning phase each year, you don't get that the development of the skills that I suppose you develop in such a intensive system that scanning would be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only do the one thing. I wouldn't know how to do anything else on it. So, and plus, the same farmers do it every year. So once we get it set up, they can save it to their favourites, and then next year just bang, hit the favourites, and we're away. Which is what we've been doing the last couple of years, just getting everybody to save it, and we've got the systems working. So now it's easy, but yeah, it does take a bit initially, and as you say, people aren't familiar with the system, so it can take a little bit to get it going, but it's not hard. You just have to do it right.
Like the other thing you can do is you can use it from a farmer's perspective, and I'm thinking about so we're mid-side sampling and fleece weighing in the shed with RU Hoggets, and we get a contractor in, and he has a barcode printer, and he records the fleece weights against the eIDs. He prints out 2 barcodes, and those barcodes follow that fleece onto the scales for the weighing, and then a sample comes out of that fleece that we've marked before the sheep go on the shed on the mid side. So there's a spray mark on the fleece when it's on the table. The other barcode goes with that in a bag, and that goes off to Riverina wool testers. And then the other barcode, that because there's 2 barcodes per eID, then goes in the line that the fleece ends up in the wool shed. Now that guy that we employ is recording the eIDs, printing the barcodes, recording the weights, and recording the fleece lines. And he just sends me an Excel spreadsheet with all that, because I'm too busy at shearing to record it, and I don't want to have to buy a fleece weighing table and a barcode reader and all that sort of stuff. And it costs $50 an hour. And he then also sends all that data off to Riverina wool testers, where we send our wool samples, and they put it all together and send it back in an Excel spreadsheet that has all the data against the individual eID. So you can sort of contract it out in some cases, and you don't need to be the expert. It's just when you get the data back, what you do with it. So that is one way around trying to be on top of all this stuff, is if you can get some people in that know more about it than you do. And that's a bit like John. If that's what they do all the time, they nail it, and it's more efficient than trying to do it yourself once a year.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think what's come out today particularly has been that it's a team effort. You've got your support, you've got to develop your support systems to help in those practices. For David and Fiona, you've both been using the eID technology for quite a while now, but if you can think back to when you first started and on the journey through, have you found that using the eID has changed your management practices at all?
We haven't really changed our management practices, but we probably have a far more understanding of what each animal is doing, and whether we haven't got too serious about whether they're a twin, or because we sort of lambing at 160-odd%, we're not really taking a lot of notice with their stud stuff because they're terminals. We could probably go, which we will probably go into the next little phase of it, is into the more reproduction stuff, and where we'll have to utilise more of that technology, use that technology more with the preg testing and the scanning, etc. But we have found that very, for scanning, like you do your weaning weights and your post weaning weights and all your other measurements, when that's all done, it's all done on the XR, and all it comes back, and we just check it and we put it into it, and it's just quite easy to put it across into our management program, which is Pedigree Master, which goes off to sheep genetics for evaluation and comes back with the relevant ASBVs, etc. And it's quite simple to do that. That's coming from someone who actually doesn't do it, but Colleen does that quite comfortably. That side of it, and we can actually use. I can use the drafting mechanisms to sort sheep quite comfortably now, but it wasn't always as easy as it sounds. Yeah.
What about you, Fiona?
Look, I reckon one of the best things you can have in terms of eID is something like a sheep handler. We got a sheep handler not necessarily for eID, but to make sheep handling easier. But once you get something that's got a built-in eID reader and recording weights and stuff, it's a real game changer. It makes utilising eIDs so much easier. So because it sort of opens up the capacity to do things like auto drafting and record weights. And the whole auto drafting thing is a real game changer. Like, sort of, I'm single operator. It's me and a dog, really. So drafting has always been a bit of a pain. But now I can set things up on the auto drafter, and you can draft off things, as I said, twins and singles. You can do it on age. You can do it on sex in Hoggets. It's fantastic, and it's really labour efficient. So what we do is, as I said, we started off with doing fleece weights and mid-sized samples, and then with that experience, we found there was just so much variation when you're looking at individual animals that we realised we had potential to really take off animals that weren't performing. But it became apparent that we weren't really being fair on everything if we didn't have the birth type recorded. So now we're recording eID tags when they go into lambs at lamb marking. We've been doing that for a couple of years now, and that really sets you up for using things like auto drafters. So at lamb marking, the tags go in and we record the year that they're born against that tag and the sex. And more recently, because we're not mulesing, we started recording breech cover as well. So when it comes to auto drafting, we can draft things off on sex because it's recorded at birth. We can draft things off on the year they're born because it's recorded at birth. And the breech cover stuff we can look at down the track and take off those ones that don't have such good breech cover. Yeah, like it's just, there's just a lot of potential, I think, but you've got to be able to link it in with sort of a sheep handler to make it easier. Well, that's the way we've been doing it. And if you can use that data for selection pressure, that's a big plus as well, because, I mean, obviously we put effort into trying to get rams that hit breeding objectives, but if you can take that tail out of the bell curve that don't fit what you want to do, you're making more genetic progress. And so whether it's stuff like fleece weight micron against birth type, twins or singles, or whether it's breech cover, it sort of just helps you move along a bit faster. And I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't using eID.
Yeah, it's just been a development of technology. As things became easier, you move into the next phase.
Yeah, and look, I got to the stage now that, and I suppose the more you learn, the more you realise you don't know all that much. But the other thing is, yeah, just doing a little bit at a time. That the thing I'm going to start recording now is DAGs on ewes when they come through at drenching, and DAG is genetic, but I just want to know if it's the same ewes coming through a couple of times a year that have still got DAGs on them. And if they're repeat offenders, I'll get rid of them, because it's just, well, it's more work. It's more risk of flies, and it's not something we really want to be dealing with down the track with having non-mule sheep.
Yeah, well, my final question for you all is that what advice do you have for people just starting out? And I suppose that's a good starting point, is just start little and often for those things and build it up from there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry. David?
Who have we got? Yeah, I think you've, well, Fiona said there a minute ago, like the handling part is probably, like the sheep handlers, etc., make it a lot easier to set up your draftings and things like that with the new technology. But I think they probably have to have a focus on what they want to achieve for a start. Instead, what their objects that they want to measure, and not be not try and do everything at once. Do it step by step. Try and do a one measurement and work, or two measurements at a time, until they get used to it, how to handle the machinery, how to understand it, and eventually they'll grow with more confidence, and they'll get more skilled at using that technology, and slowly build into it without trying to race into it. And if you stuff something up once, it's probably you stuff the whole lot. So, just small steps at a time until you get comfortable with it and know where you want to go and what you want to test, measure. And I think that's probably what they need to do early on when they first take up technology.
Does anyone have anything else any advice I'd like to give to people just starting out?
Just to start off, with exactly what David said. Start off really simple, maybe just measure 1 or 2 things, and probably preg scanning is a good place to start, and then maybe follow those lambs through. Make sure whoever you're using has a really good phone support service, so you feel confident that if you're not happy, you can ring someone up. And the other thing I found really useful was go out and talk to people who are doing it and watch how they're doing stuff in the yards and get a bit of a feel. So then you've got someone who's not selling you something, can give you a pretty honest appraisal of how something works. And if there's another farmer out there that's doing, and you can go and bounce ideas off them and learn from their mistakes, because I think like we've certainly made mistakes with what we've done. And I've learned from other people talking to them about what they've done right and what they've done wrong, and it's certainly helped me.
Absolutely. John, anything to add, or everyone should be scanning?
Oh, well, absolutely. That's a given. Well, what we've found here, I suppose, a lot of people rushed into buying all the big gear and the flash gear, and it's fairly expensive. And as Fiona and David have both said, if you've got to get your systems and what you want to measure clear, because there's no point. Like, to be honest, the majority of tags that I read, people never use the information. So if you're not going to use the information, it's a bit of a waste of time investing in all this gear. As I said, the stud guys find it really useful, but the normal farmers, even though they're getting this information, they've got years and years and years of it, but they never use it. I mean, they say, oh, we might use it one day, or one day we'll, be able to select for the twins, twin ewe lambs and that. But the vast majority, I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just saying that's the reality that I'm seeing. So yeah, I agree. You've got to have a reason and an ability to use that information to get it off your XR and make it practical.
Yeah, absolutely. The further information to join the group on Facebook that we've got discussing eIDs and getting updates on the case studies as they come out with the farmers involved in the PDS, and also available on the SFS website and through MLA and BCG.